Hello folks and welcome to our game again this Monday morning, afternoon even, with myself Shane Stapleton, and as ever joined by Michael Verney, who's in a hot box of a car there at the moment. I'd say you'll sweat more than you did playing for Burr's second team over the weekend.
Potentially. No, I sweat quite a bit yesterday now. We actually left one behind us yesterday. We were bet by 4 points by Claudia Gales, who would have been roaring favourites going in, but we missed a good few chances. Both teams amazingly finished with 13 in what I wouldn't have called a dirty game, but there was a couple of little flashpoints in it. I wasn't involved in any of them, thank God. But yeah, we left that one behind us, and then the senior game was a thriller, but it was a heartbreaker in the wind-up again. Shinrone winning after extra time. Geaney, Mac, it was just, heartbreaker.
Yeah, so like that was, the two quarterfinals, I suppose, in Offaly. Ryan is 3-13, Coolderry 1-16, so Ryan is through again. And ye finished 322 to 130, Shinrone county champions on top again. Right, paint us the picture. What was the drama like?
It was dramatic from start to finish. We started well. We were up 1-4 to a point. Emmett Nolan, who flew home from Dubai and has been doing that for the last couple of games, he got an early goal. Then Shinrone really got into the game. Probably second quarter kind of took over a bit. They ended up 2 up at half time. I think it was 12-1-7. And they were always 3 ahead in the second half. And then they got a soft goal from a long range free from Eamon Cleary that went all the way to the net. And they were 7 up, I think, at that stage, 19-12. And I was literally thinking, like, Shinrone probably win by 10 here. And I think because they got that goal and were 7 up with maybe 10 to go, they kind of retreated back a small bit. We chipped away. Did we ever actually look like we were going to get level? Probably not, until Morgan Watkins popped up with a ball, maybe 13 yards out, tight angle, absolutely rattled it to the net. Last puck of the game. Players absolutely exploded. We'd all the momentum going into extra time, and Morgan Watkins got another brilliant goal 2 minutes into extra time. And then Emmett Nolan had a good goal chance, saved by Eamon Cleary. We should have been 6 up. Shinrone could have been buried. Instead, they went down, I think, and hit the next 5 points, and were 2 up a half time of extra time. And they just held on. We lobbed a few frees in at the very end, and I think it was Darren Crane for Shinrone got a brilliant flick in. I think it was on Morgan Watkins again, actually, to deny what would have been a certain goal, probably, and the match winner at the very end. But yeah, an absolutely enthralling game. From a Burr point of view, Shinrone were probably the better team overall. But it's one of them games where you mightn't have been the better team, but you still could have won the game. And from a Shinrone point of view, it's like I've chatted about this to you numerous times. When a team wins and gets the monkey off their back, they all of a sudden know how to manage big games, and they know how to get results, and they have that bit of cuteness coming down the stretch in games. Now, don't get me wrong, they were surviving at different times, but there was middle parts of halves there where they really kicked on and showed a bit of experience of winning a county title and getting that monkey off their back. Survival is probably the best. They survived yesterday, and they'll probably think after yesterday that they're braced for anything that will come thereafter, because there was a hell of a lot thrown at them.
So that's 15 years now without a county title for Burr, and that monkey is well and truly attached to your back at this stage. I see a question here from Hurling1234. Many up and coming players in Burr, but like that must be a tough one now for the players. There's this, like I would have seen this in Burr's League growing up, that the team that won the All Ireland in 1987. That I think that in some ways it kind of weighed down on the next few generations and sort of held them back in a way. In that there's this huge history and you're supposed to live up to that or whatever. And it maybe weighed down several generations to come. Is that happening in Burr? Is that kind of, all those titles he won, is that kind of weighing on the current players?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. I think we just have struggled to get over the line in big games over the last decade, probably, or more, to be honest with you. Like, I honestly think if we'd won yesterday, we would have gotten to the county final. That's just, and maybe that's a hunch or just a feeling. But when you win a game like that, what it does for you, and even winning a game after penalties, if it had gone to penalties, and it easily could have had, I think we would have kicked on and we would have had, maybe would have played with a bit more confidence or whatever. But it's 15 years, and anybody that's looking from the outside in and anyone that's looking from the inside out would say Kilcormac are probably going to dominate when Screeney and Breckin Kavanagh, James Matton and all these boys come through, and some of them are coming through now. that they're probably going to be the dominant force, and it's going to there's a couple of years there before their kind of seasoned senior players that you might need to take advantage of. Unfortunately, we haven't. But Shinrone are in decent order to try and retain their title. And imagine like if it was a case where, you know, they'd never won one before, they get their hands on it, and all of a sudden they're back, you know, in that position again. Interesting one, Shano, on that match as well. Trevor Fletcher is obviously over Shinrone. He's playing with Kilcormac, and he actually nipped off to play Junior B for Kilcormac after the game yesterday. It's kind of a mad one. They won. They're in the Junior B semi-final as well, but he's all action on and off the pitch.
And his son, of course, scored a goal for Roscrea the day before when Lockmore just about pipped Roscrea in that brilliant quarter-final in Tipperary. With so many different championships to look at, and there's so much going on, but I want to throw this out to the viewers. Ireland are in the Rugby World Cup at the moment. Do you care? Do you want to see them winning? Like, because there is a certain amount of people out there who actively don't want to see them winning, who hate listening to the terminologies that's used when they're talking up the heroes and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I heard Jamie Heaslip talking about the cadence of a game there the other day, and I have to say now, I nearly got sick. But
I wonder, is he playing up to an act at this stage, or is he trying to play up to this character?
I don't think so, because you know that tweet he did last week when he was talking about the tech companies and the startups and all that kind of stuff. I thought initially, okay, this is the exact sort of rugby rot talk now that we're all, you know, that sickens us all. And then I thought, okay, do you know what? That was probably a wind-up. It had to be a wind-up. And then he put his Twitter, his ex, I should say, on private. And I thought, oh, wait, he was serious. So I actually don't think any of it is just a wind-up. I just think that's, you know, what they were reared on. That sort of rot talk. We talk intensely and all that kind of stuff. They actually come out genuinely thinking this nonsense.
Yeah, now I have to say, I wouldn't have met anyone that I'm aware of that doesn't want Ireland to win the Rugby World Cup. Now, to be fair, you're up in the height of it, up near Balls Bridge, like you're right in the height of it, where you have some rugby country, as they say, and then you have the exact opposite. It's kind of some people are either one extreme, as in they're all in, they're talking like they're supposed to be talking if they're following the Irish rugby team, and then there's the opposite where they're the antithesis of anything to do with rugby. But I definitely be hoping that they win the World Cup, and well, on rankings they're the best team in the world, and there's been no disaster in this Rugby World Cup yet. And there's been several disasters before, Namibia, etc., back in the day under Eddie O'Sullivan. Big test at the weekend, all right, but it's a mad one. It goes on for a hell of a long time. Like, they are in camp for, like, it's not like the Soccer World Cup. What do they play? Maybe every 5 days in the Soccer World Cup, something like that. It's every week in the Rugby World Cup. It's probably because of how attritional the games are, but it's a fair marathon. I think it's 7 weeks from start to finish. You could be fair sick of the fella you're rooming with by the end of the 7 weeks. I wonder, do they change it, or what did they do to mix it up a bit? But no, I wouldn't say I'm fully behind the Irish rugby team. I'm not going to be going around with me scars or anything like that, but I'll get into it from this weekend onwards. I'll be honest, I haven't watched a minute yet, but I will get into it from this weekend onwards.
What's your favorite rugby kind of phrase? You know, the old terminology. Is it kind of like getting to the emotional pitch? Is it, you know, pillar defenders, latch players, crabbing? You don't want your scrum crabbing now. You really don't. Jackling for the ball.
Some of them are new on me now, I have to say. Some of that, you're obviously frequenting certain establishments up in Dublin where you're hearing this. See, you're the type though that would go somewhere just to hear that, just so you can annoy yourself almost. What other ones? There's probably a few. Emotional pitch is a mad kind of one, really. You know, it is a bit of a mad one.
Okay, well, I'm delighted to say we've got Eamon Murphy from the Echo joining us now. Not to talk rugby, I don't think, Eamon.
Absolutely.
Are you following us, Ireland's call all the way to the, where is it on? France.
Listen, we're too busy with hurling and Cork and football. We've no time for this rugby malarkey at all. Yeah,
and tell us about Cork at the moment, because like it's a bit of a shock, I suppose, to people. Like, you probably would have seen Glen Rovers all year, but the fact that the 28 times county champions winners, they're 97 years at the top tier, the club of Jack Lynch, Christy Ring, Patrick Horgan in 3 county finals there not so long ago. They've been relegated, and there's no Northside hurling team in the top 12 now.
Yeah, I suppose it's the fact it's a top 12, isn't it, that just makes it so cutthroat. Back in the day, the Glen could have gone a few seasons and did without winning county championship matches, but there wasn't any mandatory relegation. I mean, that's only in the last 15 years. So there was a bit of inevitability once they lost to Bishopstown in that last group game that they were going to go down. Kanturk are a dogged team. They're your classic kind of country team. It's all the cliches that you bring them up to a rural venue and you get stuck into the Glen and all the rest. But I think what it was is that Kanturk were unlucky not to beat SARS, who were one of the county favourites in the first round. They drew, they lost to Newtown in the second round again. They also probably should have won, whereas the Glen had lost 3 matches in a row, a desperate defeat to Bishopstown. And it's not trying to insult Bishopstown, but whoever was in Bishopstown's group this year would have been saying, they're going to be in the relegation final, they're not going to win a group match. And I don't know, did the Glen go into the game with that bit of just baggage on their shoulders, bit of arrogance, and get caught? But I think the shock really is that on paper, the Glen's team is up there with the best 4 or 5 in the county. If you're picking 6 teams to win it out of the 12, they'd have been in that top 6 more than anything to do with tradition or past counties. It's just, they still have Hoggy. He still get 3 or 4 scores from playing every club match in Cork. He does it at inter-county, let alone in, at club level. And they won a minor county in Cork 2 years ago. So they have a couple of good young lads too. But they just got into that. I don't know, they were going well in the first round against Blackrock, got caught in the second half, and they were stuck to the ground ever since.
Yeah, because I think in the league, didn't they play Bishopstown? And Glen would have been down plenty of players, and yet they went out and absolutely hockeyed them.
Oh, and yeah, Bishopstown got relegated in Division 2 of the league, so there was no logic.
You look at the quality of some of these players that Glen have. I mean, Hoggy's the obvious one, but you've Owen Downey, Robert Downey, Simon Kennefick, who's Christy Ring's grandson, and he's a quality player. There's a lot of Dean Brosnan is another very
former Cork player, Stephen McDonald.
Yeah, how on earth has this happened though? What's your hunch on it?
Look, I think the group was a hard group in that while Bishopstown were kind of your weakest link in it, in the Glen's opening 2 matches, they didn't get to play Bishopstown in one of those 2 games. You had to play both Blackrock and Middleton. You were playing Middleton down in Carricktool, which again, I know it's leaning on this country venue thing as opposed to playing them up around the city, but it makes it a bit tougher. It's a tighter pitch. It plays tighter anyway, even if, dimension wise, it's not tighter. And Middleton are into the semi-final. They got top seeding. They only won it 2 years ago. Blackrock beat the Glen in the county final a couple of years ago. They were in the final last year. So it was just a tough group. The one thing that stuck out to me for the Glen before the season, I would have thought they would have competed well in it. They played that Division 2 league final against my own club, Ballincollig, who were in the 3rd tier, so Premier Intermediate. And they put their full strength team out in that league final. And I did think that was strange in that, Ballincollig obviously went as close to full strength as they could. They're playing a team, they're playing the Glen. We don't be beating the Glen. The Glen, we don't be playing them at the top level. We're not in that grade for a long time. We haven't been there for 20 odd years at the top level. So I thought that was surprising. I was thinking, they're going into that competition and or that final, and you're going to say, we'll try 4 or 5 lads out. You might still play Hoggy and the Downies and all that, but on paper, I walked in there that day, I got the team sheet. I was like, geez, are they going to start with this 15? With Kennefick and Brosnan, all the lads were playing. So that did surprise me. I was wondering about their depth. But then you flip around, the 5th tier in Cork hurling is called Premier Junior. And the Glen are into the semi-final of that with their second team. They won a penalty shootout there very dramatically over the weekend on Sunday after getting relegated on the Saturday. So there are players there, they're into the minor semi-final again this year. Now, I know minors under 17 and harder to gauge, but they had a great win over Inniscarra the other day. They're not short players, so I think they just got into a rut. And maybe there's a lot of baggage too. They lost 3 county finals in a row. I know we say they won 2 of them, but that back-to-back win was 2016. It's a long time ago now. So they lost those 3 county finals. Hoggy was injured last year. They lost the quarterfinals. So it's disappointing. But look, if you're a fan of hurling, you're disappointed for the Glen. I know they're rivals, as you said, the Northsiders. There's no Northside representation, but really over the years, that's just been the Piercing and the Glen. And the Piercing going down isn't as much of a surprise because their underage wouldn't be as vibrant and they don't have anyone as good as Hoggy on the pitch. They don't have a Cork senior starter, whereas, the Glen have 3. So look, it's disappointing. I'm disappointed for the Glen. I really am. I'm sad to see them go down, but it's just a reflection. That's where Cork are at the moment. We've gone with a very cutthroat county championship. Groups of 4, only 2 teams come out. The last day in the group, you can be looking at sneaking a quarter-final slot, or you could be maybe end up in the relegation playoff. You can end up in the relegation playoff with a win, depending on your scoring difference and how the other groups go. So, you can go down with 3 defeats now in Cork, which, as opposed, Glen went down with 4, so they can't argue with it. But, if Kanturk had gone down, they'd have gone down with 3 defeats. They drew their first match. It's just a format. It's tough. It's tough. I feel sorry for them, but at the same time, it's the Glen. Like, they don't want anyone to feel sorry for them. They'll tear into anybody, take on all comers. That's the way they operate. So that'll be up to them to boot right into it next year, and that senior A grade will be winnable for them. Like,
is the Cork Senior Championship better for that aim and better for that cutthroat nature?
It probably is. Look, I've seen a few debates, particularly on Twitter. Some people saying it's very hard to build a team, or it's very hard to kind of build a system of play and whatnot when every game is cutthroat. But like, look, we saw it, that round robin Sam Maguire Cup thing this year. She was putrid half it. Like, you know what I mean? Cork did well over. We beat Mayo when Mayo were probably a bit complacent, but in general, like, there was a lot of watery games in that, and you just don't get that in the Cork Championship at the moment. I mean, there were teams who won 2 of their 3 group games who went out on scoring total in the football, not even like scoring difference, just that they had scored less goals and points than the team they finished level on scoring difference with, and they couldn't be separated. So that has to be a good thing. Like, it's adding to drama. Like, the crowds have been very good at all the games. There's fierce interest every weekend. The program is very well set up. It is ruthless. It is cutthroat. Would it be maybe easier if there were 4 groups of 4 as opposed to 3 groups of 4, and relegation wasn't as much of a threat? Possibly. And maybe you still only had 2 teams coming out of the group. But Cork they've set it up. There's 5 tiers of 12. I think it's very effective so far. Like, from a supporter's point of view, it was easy for me to say, I'm not on the sideline with a team or playing for a team that are under threat of relegation. But from a supporter's point of view, they love it. People are loving it. They're lapping it up.
When you said that there's big crowds at these games, what are we talking about? Like, I look at some of the other county championships, and there's such small parishes involved. I'm looking at Tipperary, and it's relatively small because these parishes are so small, but you're in a big stadium in Semple Stadium. I look at Dublin, GA, whether it's hurling or football, the crowds tend to be quite small. What are we looking at down in Cork?
Look, I mean, I'm not going to say there's thousands at every game. No, there would have been a couple of thousand in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the 2 double headers over the weekend, which looked teeny, of course. And I know on TG Card it looked like there was no one there, but like, that's still a couple of thousand people paying through the gate to go to watch matches. Up in Fermoy, it was virtually a sellout for the Glen Kanturk, as you'd expect, because that was really the game of the weekend and it wasn't being streamed. So I think they were reckoning there was around 1,500 up that. But you'd have a lot of games where there would be 400 or 500 people. But you'd remember it's Cork, so there are 5 tiers with 12 clubs in each tier. So there are multiple games going on at the same time. So it does make it harder to go to neutral games. I know myself, even trying to go to Ballincollig matches, I wouldn't get to all of them, obviously, with work and things, and just because there'd be clashes. But yeah, you're getting good crowds. Like Ballincollig in the football played Éire, which was a derby match there last week. Winner takes all, or Éire could have drawn, Ballincollig won it. It was out in Coachford, perfect venue for it, because anyone in that mid-Cork area could go along. And there was a huge crowd. There was bones of 1,000 people out there, 700 or 800 people. And that's brilliant in a rural venue because it's great atmosphere. And the atmosphere is adding to it. That bit of bite is adding to it.
And there's a question in from Richard Hogan for you. Would it be fair to say, Eamon, that this is more of a blip than something serious for the Glen?
I would say yes. Even though, again, I've seen people tweeting, and it's in the context. I know what you're saying with the north side. There's no north side hurling team, and again, that's a kind of a headline stat that you'll put out there. But at the end of the day, like, Delaney's were a strong hurling club in the 90s. They're long gone as a force. They're not winning junior A's. St. Vincent's are up the north side as well. Brian Dillon's, Mayfield are in the semi-final and intermediate A, but they're not powerhouses of hurling. They haven't won senior titles or anything, so it's really only the Pairshig and the Glen. I would point to their underage. Like, they have some very, very good underage players. Like you mentioned, Brosnan, like Dean Brosnan's nephew, Michael Tyke Brosnan, is up there with the best under 15 hurlers in Cork. He's a guaranteed Cork minor. He could even possibly be involved next year as an under 16, though Cork tend to go with the guys on the edge, but he'll be thereabouts. So like, there's loads of talent there. Like Steve Lynham and Owen O'Leary didn't have great seasons for the Glen, but like Owen O'Leary won an under 20 All-Ireland there. Steve Lynham is an absolute dinger of a player. He's small, very skillful, was a Cork minor last year. Like, he only turned 18 recently. They're not short players. They really aren't short players. They're very, very good players. But will it be easy to come up? No. It won't, because there's going to be 4 or 5 good teams next year in Senior A. It won't be easy. The Pairshig are down there anyway. So, we're already looking ahead. It's terrible. They're just ready to say, geez, could they meet in the group stages, or could you get a semi-final or final with them involved? But the Pairshig didn't get out of their group this year. They drew a game, won a game, lost a game, and they didn't go out and score in difference. So,
how much credit would you give to Kanturk? Because it sounds like they've been playing good stuff.
They have, yeah. They were very well set up on the weekend, like what they used. Larkin McLaughlin, everyone will be familiar with him. Obviously played with Cork for a number of years, but in 2013 in the 2 All-Ireland finals. Then very tasty hurler on the ball, very smart, very hard working. So he was named at 15, played as a sweeper. So they were nicely set up. But like for Kanturk, it's not really a plucky underdog story in that if you look at any Cork under 20 panel there for the last, we'd say 7 or 8 years, even going back when Dennis Ring was in charge when they lost to Tipp in those finals. Like Ryan Walsh was there, who'd be Aidan Walsh's cousin. Brian O'Sullivan was their top scorer at the weekend. He won an under 20 All-Ireland. They have a lot of good hurlers there. Darren Brown, Mark Hoggy at the weekend, he would have, won a Fitzgibbon Cup and been on the Cork panel fringes of it for a while. They're not short good hurlers, and obviously Aidan and Lorcan are still great servants, and they're only in their early 30s. At club level, you can still operate. What probably makes it impressive about Kanturk is that they are going well in both codes. They're in the quarterfinal of Senior A football now at the weekend, and it's a town, but it's a relatively small town. Like Kanturk came up out of junior at a time there about 15 years ago when Cork were kind of just redrawing the grades, and they didn't win junior to come up. There was 4 teams came up that season, so they came up without winning it, but they've made up for it since. Played in Croke Park, won multiple county titles. They're a serious team, but it's funny, like there are 6 Walshes basically playing, between Aidan and Tommy Walsh and 4, sometimes 5 other Walshes. So it is a rural story that way for people who are, used to that kind of style thing, or you've one family backboning a club, and it is like, it's, Aidan Walsh and his cousins they're backboning that team. And nearly all of them are 6 foot tall to 6'4", like they're tanks, like, they are big, strong guys, and they can hurl as well. So Kanturk would have a lot of admirers around Cork for what they're doing. The fact it's dual as well, that's why I think hats off to Kanturk for that,
It's funny you say that. I think there was 5 Geanies in I think 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 were all Geanies yesterday for Dingle. So it's amazing.
That's it. It's fierce like that. Yeah.
Amazing. Just a quick one, Eamon, here. A question in from Hurling1234. He just says, you were talking about kind of dual players there with Kanturk. He said, do you think the dual players would burn out with the bars, i.e. Hayes, Toomey, Callans, 2 county finals last year and back into 2 semis, a lot of games in a tight schedule? It's week on, week off. It's Hurling 1 week, football next week. Yeah.
I thought maybe like next weekend is the football quarterfinals. I thought they might, that last weekend in October, they might juggle it around a little bit and look at clubs again. Selfishly looking at my own club, Ballincollig, because they're in a quarterfinal, semi-final. I think, geez, we might get another week or whatever. But I suppose with the fact you finals coming up and you're trying to allow replays in finals, it's on the day for the rest all the way to penalties. But so I suppose the county board trying to build in maybe if you have a replay, which you could easily have in a county final. So with the bars, it is tight. They did get top seed in the football, so next weekend they're not playing. So that's a big advantage for them. Okay. But the Cahalans are playing because they all play with Castlehaven in that funny little quirk whereby they registered as footballers for Castlehaven before they went with the bars, even though they're from Toker. So, it's one of those unusual ones you wouldn't get around the place, but and they'd be very proud Castlehaven players, played multiple county finals with them. Damien has the county medal from 2013 with Castlehaven. So it will be tight. It'll just, if they don't get injured, I don't think there's a problem. So like, yourselves, lads, if you're winning every week, so you don't care less about. You just have a bit of a puck around or a kick around, and a small bit of tactical work and matchups. So it's when it's if you suffer a defeat there, maybe in one quarter or the other, and pick up a few injuries. Brian Hayes has had a lot of injuries, for example. He's been a guy who's been quite injury prone, and he's a serious goal threat in both codes, so they'll need him fit. But I think the bars are bubbling along nicely. They got beaten by SARS. That was no bad thing. They're better off losing in the group stages. They were a bit flat in that one. They didn't have a lot of hunger, I thought. They didn't want it enough, and SARS had drawn the first match, so needed to win. Bars knew they'd probably get out of the group even if they lost it. Did enough against Charleville again. And the big thing was, they've got that young, pacey attack. So, Ben Cunningham, 5 from play at the weekend. Jack Allan, 4 from play. William Buckley, who was with the Cork 20s during the year. Red helmet, buzzes around the pitch. 4 from play. So, a balanced team, and it's well suited to Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. That space you get, fellas can find pockets of space there. They're well suited to that.
Just how good is Ben Cunningham, Eamon? I've seen him at close quarters, and I've been impressed. Very lucky.
An under-16 county final a few years ago, my own club, we were raging favourites. We'd knocked out all the top teams along the way, and all bar the goal was scored by Ben Cunningham and William Buckley. So someone like Buckley was under 15 in the 16 final, got about 5 points and play drifting around, and Cunningham got the bones at 10 or 12 points. We'd say again, he took the freeze, which he's excellent at, but he always gets 4 or 5 from play as well. That's what I like about him. He's a brilliant free taker. You'd have him for that alone, but he is capable of getting scores. There was an accusation when he would have been that age, kind of 16, 17, that he was, even though a very big man, he's 6'2", he's like his father, big imposing guy, that he tended to kind of play off the shoulder, look for the pop pass, great shooter out the field, and be looking for those points all the time. And I do think last year with the Cork 20s, in the matches against Clare and Limerick especially, and this year now with the bars and in the county final, he's putting his hand up, he'll win a couple of puck outs, he'll ride the tackle himself instead of just looking for the ball off the shoulder. And from a Cork perspective, if you're thinking of him being a Cork player, we're great at developing fellas who'll get you 3 or 4 points in play because they'll come on the loop, and look for a little offload, or they're just lovely shooters. But I think there's a bit more about him, but he still has it all to prove. Look, he's only 20, but I'd be stunned if he wasn't in the Cork lineup next year all the way through the league, and depending how the bars go, and being thereabouts for championship, because Cork have to change the team up. Can't just keep going to the same guys. He has to be right on their radar, I think.
And Cork look a little bit more physical based on some of what we saw last year, including the All-Ireland Under-20 final, which Verney hates talking about.
Jeez, yeah.
That's still a bone of contention with him. Go on, Verney.
No,
You want to jump in?
hold on a second here now. You're totally misconstruing this. There was just a couple of incidents that were over the line. I've no issue with physicality or the only place I condone bullying is on a hurling field or a football field. I've no issue with that. But Eamon, would you even say that some of the stuff was over the line in the under?
Yeah, sure. Listen, Cork rode their luck there. You know what I mean? Like especially the potential red card for Shane Kingston. Like, you know, I suppose if you VAR and that, you were gone. You know, like at the time, I thought it was borderline red, and certainly then when I saw the replay, yeah, it could have been a red. I suppose it was early in the game. That probably was what, 10 minutes to go, whatever.
The Ty Kennelly effect.
Yeah, it is a bit of that. Like, look, in Cork, I suppose we did, like, the romantic story was Offaly to win. We didn't want to be part of that,
Yeah.
And I know it's only underage, and no one was getting carried away because we have those few underage titles now, and I'll still go back to that. Dara Fitzgibbon 2018 under-21 team is better than any of the teams that we have now, and they didn't even win it. So you don't necessarily need to win it to come through.
Eamon, there was no need whatsoever to bring that up.
Worst defeat of all time, I'd say, in Cork hurling history, nearly. But look, from a Cork point of view, people like to see that bit of cynicism, and it wasn't to condone it. Everyone accepted, look, he should have got sent off, and there was a few other borderline tackles. But from a Cork point of view, they were playing a lighter Offaly team with guys, a lot of them in age, young, a lot of them only 18, say, with 2 years under 20 left, and Cork exploited that. They were a bit nasty. There was a bit of Ben O'Connor. Like, he was one of the sweetest hurlers I ever saw, but, there was a streak of sauciness in Ben. Absolutely. The helmet would come off. He'd leave the hurling and stuff like that. You had to, he gave it and took it the same way. So there was a bit of that about him. Ronan Curran was kind of the same. He's on the sideline as well. Ronan would sometimes give silly frees away, but he was a tough operator too. And there was a bit of that in him. And I genuinely, Cork hurling people were just relieved to see a bit of that. Do we want to see our teams play like that all the time? No, but we've been so soft, like, for a long time. We've had, so few players that are willing to just do that hit, borderline, do that red card thing. Poor old Damien Callahan, like I did mention there, he's been actually outstanding for the Bars in their 4 matches this year. He's been so good. Toughness, but also on the ball and things. And, like, the much maligned, I think, is the phrase with Damien Callahan. But like as we go on now, I think history will be kinder to him. We'll say if we had a few more Damien Callahans and Owen Cadigans, we probably wouldn't be waiting since 2005 for an All-Ireland.
And he had a
sometimes on the physicality as well, you actually have to go to the far side, too far, and then you find you find a happy medium. Like, Ballygunner went too far a couple of times, like against Lochmore and a couple others, but they found a really happy medium now where they'll do it when it needs to be done or whatever.
Yeah, and you're trying not to get red cards. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's the happy medium. Because, like, if you go mad into it at the end of the day, you'll end up finishing up, like, and I mentioned Callahan because he did pick up 2 red cards, but especially in that 2017 All-Ireland semi-final, that probably cost Cork the game, because they were going nicely at the time, a couple of points up. So, like, there is the happy medium, but there has been a bit of a soft underbelly in Cork, and various managers over the years, whether it's Kieran Kingston, whether it's, even Sully as a selector, and they're giving out now, people are insulting Cork and all that, but like the only way we'll shut people up is by going away winning a few All-Irelands. We haven't even won a Munster now since 2018. So, like, there's no point in whinging about Limerick or this and that, and Limerick or they're borderline, and Hegarty could get sent off in every match. Like, they used to be saying that back in the day about the Rock, and we were loving it, So people want that. You want your hard men on your team, because you'll win nothing without them.
And Eamon, so we're talking about this increased physicality, and you've already mentioned Finbar's beating Charleville 122-15. But the other game that was on TV, and there was obviously Kiely beating Douglas by 13 points, but Sarsfields were against Blackrock. Sarsfields won 115-15 points, and a goal there for Jack O'Connor. He scored 1-3, and he looked quite good. Aaron Myers scored 7 points, all from frees. But now I was flicking between the Tipperary club matches and this one, which was on TG Carr. And we're talking about all the physicality. I felt like, and maybe unfairly so, that this looked like a bit like a non-contact sport.
I know.
Really.
There is an element to that in Cork. And, look, John Myler got into trouble a few years ago when he was doing one of those online streaming commentaries, or maybe it was on RT, but when the Cork games were live, and he was saying, look, the refs have to leave the game go, and he's going to be our minor manager next year, and is doing savage work there the last couple of years, Cork under 15s and 16s, and putting a fierce effort in with a huge squad. But he hit the nail on the head there. And at Cork, we still do lean a little bit too much into looking to give the handy free. In general, the last few years, I think it has improved, across the board. It was Kieran O'Regan from Ballyhea was refereeing the game on telly yesterday, and he's a good referee. He's a young guy. He's played the game. He appreciates you have to let a bit of physicality go. Shane Scanlon is one of our up-and-coming refs there. Again, a young guy in his 20s, he's trying to let a bit of physicality go. And you've the likes of Colin McAllister, who you'd be familiar with from being involved in the intercounty scene there maybe 10 years
Colin
ago.
McAllister, the greatest intercounty referee of all time. If you were a back, Colin McAllister was your man.
He's a back ref, and he still is. He still is.
Love that. Just like, I'm not being smart. Colin McAllister let me away with murder a couple of times. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I was loving it. I never met the man, but just I must send him a postcard or a card at some stage.
And Carl's a gent. He's such a nice guy. He's from Donaghadda in East Cork. He's a fierce, nice guy. But I think Carl was just cute enough to know people don't pay to see free takers. Like, you know, we were mentioning Ben Cunningham, great free taker. Aaron Myers is actually a very good free taker as well. Like, nobody pays to see them. But I've always said it. The problem is, and I'm sure I do it myself when I'm watching my own club, is you're sitting in there screaming for frees. We all want our team to get all the frees, like, you know, and in Cork, geez, you know, they're roaring from the backyard with the big crowds. And if we just accepted, like, let's just have, you know, 4 or 5 frees scored per team on average, you know, but wishful thinking. But I do think Cork have tried over the last years to let the game flow a bit. SARS Blackrock wasn't a great example yesterday, but I think there was ferocious bunching as well. There was silly stuff going on around the middle, and it was a funny game. It was a disappointing match. I thought that game would be far, far better. I was very disappointed in it. Very disappointed.
Maybe it's unfair, but I thought that the two teams weren't really engaging in physicality. I mean, I know you make a very good point on the refereeing, but I just thought that neither team was physical towards each other. It couldn't be more night and day compared to what we're seeing in Limerick Club hurling, Kilkenny Club hurling. So, like, people often talk about Cork don't physically horse into teams at county level because that's the way they play at club level. Yeah. And when I watched that, I thought, these teams don't seem to want to hit each other.
Yeah, and like Blackrock particularly have a physical team in that, like they have Shane and Mark O'Keefe, they have, you know, the Cashmans there in the half back line, huge guys. Ty DC must be 6'3", he was involved with the Cork panel before. Like they actually have a lot of big men. They'd be renowned for having a big physical team, but you know, SARS less so. But no, they didn't really bring it to bear. And even SARS would say up front, the likes of Aaron Myers, he does tackle hard and work back, but like James Sweeney is a huge unit, you know, towering man, probably the biggest man in the pitch yesterday, but you know, doesn't play in a massively physical way. But you have it with SARS and Blackrock, I think they were both trying to crowd the middle and just look for that kind of outlet pass, and were giving out about looking for handy guys in space to sling the ball over the bar. And Blackrock shooting then left them down because they actually found a lot of runners or a lot of people in pockets where they should be splitting the posts. Maybe it's a Parky Queeve thing, you know, you're in that big pitch there, it's kind of exposed. And there was a lot of easy points missed. But yeah, I don't think you could argue with that. It was bloodless, you know, it was bloodless. There was definitely no kind of man-on-man tearing it into the game type stuff. And then, you know, the Douglas McKinley game was even more bloodless afterwards. Unfortunately for Douglas, they always have a plethora of inter-county players, but they haven't quite got the balance right. And the likes of Owen Cadigan now and Mark Harrington, who would have been a Cork underage player, they're in their late 30s, they're in the backs and they're at the wrong end of it. And, you know, disappointing exit for Douglas. Like, I'd like to see Douglas win a hurling county in the last 10 years as kind of a new club coming through. They're not easily won, I know, but it would have been nice to see them break through and represent that city thing. Because, I mean, Doug, you're talking with Douglas now, it's like, and it's the same with my own club in Ballycollig, you know, they're similar to Dublin clubs. I mean, you're talking, when you start out at under 8, you're going to have 60 players, like between 50 and 60, you know what I mean? When you have absolutely 2 teams and subs at under 12 and 13, but that probably creates its own problems at times. SARS have managed it well enough, and then they had the history of having won counties in the 50s, and they had that breakthrough county in 2008 and managed it well and brought players through. But it does become hard. You're like, you know, I'm saying one of the reasons the Glen will be in good health is, like, you know, the Glen have a minor team there. They'll have 3 or 4 under 15s playing. Like, you never really get an under 15 playing with SARS or Douglas or Ballincollig or anything, you know, because you don't need them. You have so many players, but, you know, for toughening guys up and stealing them to play up at the higher levels, and, you know, geez, in those clubs you're fighting just to get a game, let alone be developed. And I wonder, does that happen sometime with Douglas? Now they're going well in minor this year. They're in a hurling semi-final, and they're in actually a football final tonight against the Bars at minor. But they have so many players. You know, you nearly have too many players. And I know there's fellas in world clubs now saying, geez, what are you talking about? We'd love to have that problem. But sometimes the nice balance, I think, if you've 12 to 15 players on the age, a few will drift off who don't want to play the sport or whatever, don't take to it, and then you're kind of left with 9 or 10. You'll bring up your best lads. It's very competitive, you know, you're training hard and all that. And I wonder sometimes, do the likes of Douglas suffer that? You get loads of tasty hurlers, you've loads of players, but do you get the right type players to win a county, like, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? Even yesterday I was playing with the Coola Juniors, and because of the weather, a load of games had been postponed, including a minor game. So it meant that a few of the minors that we'd had earlier in the season were able to play, and they get that exposure of playing against men, which is good for them. I'm not saying, you know, I don't know how many will end up playing senior or whatever, but I think you make a very good point there. In McKilly actually battering Douglas by 13 points. Like, a lot of those players played with, you know, because they're divisional side, played with their clubs, their smaller clubs over the weekend. We're going to see that when they play Sarsfields in the semi-final. You'll have 3 of their players playing that weekend with, you know, St. Catherine's or against Glen Rovers in the Premier Junior. Castlemartyr against Castlelyons as well. So there must be some sort of an issue there where you have players playing on the Friday and the Saturday for their own clubs, and then they go and play divisional on a Sunday or whatever. That's surely not ideal.
Yeah, it's tough, but I suppose in Cork, look, the reality is if you were probably, an outsider coming in, your outside CEO comes in, we have sweeping changes. First thing to do is just get rid of divisions, because they'll say, look, yeah, grand, a guy gets to play at a higher level, but now we've got 5 competitive grades. And even Junior A is quite competitive around Cork at various levels, and there's counties to be won. They're probably saying we don't need divisional teams at all, but there is a good tradition in divisions in Cork, in McKilly particularly. We'd say Carbery in the football, Duhallow in the football. UCC at times come up with good teams. They were poor now this year, but they can come up with good teams. So it's just there, it's tradition. And the only way around it is they play on the Sunday evening and the other teams play over the weekend. Now, one thing with McKilly now is, we'd say teams are kind of exiting the championship as we go on. Like Liz Gould were beaten, was a big upset by Mayfield on Saturday. So they'd have Duds Healy, who was brilliant for the Cork 20s this year. He got 3 or 4 points from McKilly yesterday. And John Cronin, who's been an McKilly captain. Now, he was injured yesterday from the Liz Gould match, but they're now out. So that'll probably help them. But then in the background, like, you won't see it. Like Liz Gould are actually in an East Cork County football final next weekend. They've never won it. So they're playing Carrick-Navarre. So like loads of these lads are still playing football their way in the background with the second teams that, don't get covered by just bar the local papers wouldn't get covered. So there's a lot going on, but it's just the way it is in Cork. Like Castlelyons is an interesting one. They're in the county semi-final of Premier Intermediate. They're playing Castlemartyr. They've lost 2 county finals. They've lost semi-finals. They've basically been the favourites for a number of years, but they'd have Colm Spillane, who we all know was a good player with Cork, and injuries caught up with him. They've Niall O'Leary, and they've other guys like Colm Barry, Colm Spillane's brother Anthony Spillane, who played a bit under Jimmy Barry Murphy, kind of, we'll say, back in the league there about 10 years ago. Very good hurlers. And Noel Furlong, who was a Cork selector last year, but Kieran Kingston is in there as their manager. He's had success with Father O'Neill's and his own club in Carrigtwohill. So they're really going all out for the county, but their lads haven't been playing for McKilly. So they've kind of just gone full tilt. So they're kind of all in to win that county. And I don't think anyone would begrudge Colm Spillane, particularly, who looked like he was going to be a great defender for Cork and just couldn't, cruciate injuries and various things, couldn't stay fit. No one would begrudge him that. And Niall O'Leary obviously is a very good, solid, very honest player as well. But they're going all in to kind of win this county. But they technically would, some of them would be available, depending who's played with UCC or not, be available for McKilly. So their depth is frighteningly. And you've Bill Cooper back playing for McKilly. He's been actually racked with injuries for last year. He's back this year, full tilt and strong as an ox. So they've himself and Shamie Harnedy. They've you've got your Jack Leahy and Dud Seelys, who are still under 20 next year. And then they have a lovely blend, like very nice blend.
Just a quick one, Eamon. So you have to,
and then
if you qualify to play for Killy and UCC, you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, it'll depend. Like some of them will have scholarships or whatever, whereby you have to play for the college. But yeah, that's basically it. You play for one or the other. I suppose when lads are playing for other divisions, like the likes of maybe Muskerry or Avondhu, who've been quite good the last years, but they wouldn't have the pedigree of winning, senior counties like McKilly. So I suppose like if you're down there, you'd be nearly saying you prefer to play for McKilly because you'll be in with a shout of the county, or you'll be playing in big games in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. The way the format works is there's one separate little section for the divisions. Cork have kind of skirted around the having the 16-team club championship. Just about got away with it for the last few years with Croke Park, because you would have slightly more when you add in all those divisions. It's a borderline.
You're always doing your own thing down there, in fairness.
I know. I was certain it was the end of it when this came in, that the max was 16 teams. Because some years you might only have 4 between the colleges and divisions, but most of the time you'll have 5 or 6. MTU will try and field a team when they can and things like that. So yeah, Cork have just about got away with it as it's its own championship. And then there's basically 13 teams in the club championship. So that's kind of, it seems to have satisfied Croke Park. I suppose, look, it's not making a whole difference. It's not knocking into them getting teams out to play in the Munster championships or whatever. The county championships are being completed on time. So I guess when that isn't an issue, I presume Croke Park are going, look, fine, it's a little bit of tradition that you're kind of acknowledging. And I suppose, between Cork and Kerry, really, I know obviously up in Dublin you have had, UCD in it before, but really besides Cork and Kerry, it doesn't seem to be a thing around the country that I've noticed. So, bit of tradition, how bad.
With the 2 semi-finals being SARS against Imachilly and St. Finbarrs against Middleton, like, do you have a strong fancy for anyone at this stage?
I don't. We were just chatting inside the office in the Echo this morning about it. We were kind of looking through, and you're kind of going down to the lower grades, like your Premier Juniors and your Intermediate A's. You'd have teams there. You'd be fancying kind of, there's fewer teams left, and there's a lot of second teams that you wouldn't be expecting to win the county. And in the semis, half the teams are second teams there in those. But for the top, no. I mean, like, I think that you'd be leaning to the winner of the Bars Middleton, just simply because they've won the last 2 counties, and it's awful. Like, it's nothing against SARS because they're a very strong club. Obviously, McKilly can't represent Cork in the club championship. But from a Munster club championship point of view, you're wondering, Bars were unlucky enough in it last year. Now I know they've lost Ben O'Connor to rugby, which is disaster for Cork, let alone the Bears. You'd wonder, like, if Bears could win a back-to-back, would Cork maybe have a better chance of winning a Munster title, which they could do. It'd be a shot in the arm for Cork hurling. And likewise, Middleton in that. They have lads who won the county in 2013. Conor Lehan's been injured there for the last few games. He'll be back hungry and firing, no doubt, in these last. Like, if they came out of it, would they have a good chance maybe of at least getting to a Munster final, possibly winning one? That doesn't bother any of the clubs. I know they're left, they just want to win their county. But looking at the bigger picture, he'd be leaning that way. But would I have a prediction? I wouldn't. I genuinely couldn't go. Like, any of the four could be a combo for the finals, I think. Like, I'd probably, I'd wonder with him and Kiely, you mentioned, the distractions with playing for other teams. If you'd wonder with SARS, they have underachieved for a number of years now, and it's a while since they've been in a county final. They're probably due to get back. They haven't been there since 2015. They're probably due to get back to a final. So I'd probably lean to SARS in that particular one, and Middleton Bears, I couldn't really call it. And Middleton have been sitting there now for a few weeks. They're the top seed, so they haven't played a match. Good to get Conor Lehan back injured, but Sam Quirk, who was on the Cork panel this year, he played a bit in the league. He's a good, busy midfielder, very unselfish player, exactly the type of player that you need for winning these club titles. It's grand having Conor Lehan's, but you need your Sam Quirks, and he's gone for the season with an injury, so he's a bit of a loss around the middle. So Middleton Bears will be very hard to call. That'll be a belter. Like, surely we'll get two teams tearing into each other in that one now, and it'll be a bit more lively than we got yesterday. The type of game you'd imagine TG Carr might look at covering in a couple of weeks. It's 4:00 on a Sunday. It'd be a good game to cover. So, but it'll be a cracker regardless, I'd say.
And are there any players that Pat Ryan might have his eye on during this championship? I mean, Jack O'Connor, I think he had a lot of injury problems this year, but his 1-3 stood out. Like, he has that pace, and I know you need that blend of physical players and speed merchants and all that kind of stuff. But who's kind of standing out to you?
Yeah, well, Jack will definitely back in the mix. Looks, Pat Ryan's club is SARS, so there'd be no fear that way. Yeah, he just couldn't get fit for since he had his kind of borderline all-star season there in 2021. He just couldn't get fit. The one thing I'd say about Jack is, yeah, he's a speedster, but maybe a bit different to the kind of, say Conor Lehan type guys that pick the ball, points off over the bar, pick the ball up. So he does go for goal. Like, his goal was the winner yesterday. If he gets a break, he's a bit more of the Eddie Brennan's in him, where he'll cover as much grass as he can and then see what happens. Alan Connolly's kind of the same. Another guy we missed for the whole season with injury. Like, him being injured for Blackrock yesterday, he only played 20 minutes, was a big difference. He did a few silly things on the ball. His decision making wasn't great. He was nearly trying too hard when he came in. But again, he came in, nearly got a goal, got caught for steps once. At least those lads get the ball and they go. But I'd say, look, ourselves, the way the system is now, it's very rare. Like, before Shamey Harney, he was a sub with Cork under 21s, never played minor or whatever. There's far fewer of those guys now. The under 20 system, the way it is now, and they have so many trials over the winter, and even in fact, lads, you've Astros and floodlit pitches. Everyone you can have a panel of 60 there in November with under 20, and you can look at everyone, and everyone's aware of who's going. But it's a much the bigger picture is way easier for everyone to see now, let alone people involved in squads. Ben Cunningham is the big one for me. You'll have to say Shane Kingston there, who nearly got his red card in the under 20s. He's coming out of under 20. He's a strong kind of defender, but he's playing with Balnora, so they're down in junior. But he'll be the type of guy. But I don't think you'd be placing too much stock in county championship form, really. Ethan Toomey hasn't got going yet for the Bears this year. I know himself and Ben are both Bears, but they're two guys who are 6'2" plus. They have good hands on him. So Toomey did well when he came on, in the last game when Cork went out against Limerick. So you'd be hoping for him to push on. But I'd say it'll be judged on its own merits. Once it's like, you get 1-3 in a county final, it doesn't mean you're going to be starting the first round of championship in the end of April, like in Munster Championship. So Ben Cunningham is the big one, because I think he'll add a bit of physicality to the forward line. And I think a lot of the lads from the Cork 20 team, they're under 20 again next year. Your Jack Leahy's and Dud Seeley's, leave him be. It worked well with Cunningham this year. They just left him be. Cork got an all-Ireland out of it. You could have been playing him off the bench for the seniors, and so would he have made any great difference? Probably not. And then would we have won under 20 all-Ireland? Certainly not. So I think there'll be a lot of them brewing along, and I think you'll have one or two changes. Like, I don't see radical changes to the Cork team next year. I don't see where, obviously Hoggy and Harnedy might, be down to being subs or whatever, impact subs and use them in that role and stuff. But like, a lot of the Cork lads are 26, 27. They're kind of, and Kieran Joyce will be turning 22. They're, that's the team. Like, it's put up or shut up for all these guys. Like,
just lastly, Eamon, on Cork this year, how would you rate Cork's season? Like, very close, a point or two either way in games, and you could have went on a run potentially. How would you, like, was there signs of green shoots that things are coming? A lot more consistent, I would say, this year, even though not winning those tight games. Yeah,
every game was tight anyway for starters, and they had their spells where you're under pressure for 10 minutes, you might cough up a couple of goals. Like, every team does that. That's part of hurling. It's such a free-flowing game. I wasn't getting too caught up and saying, it was all great either, because look, you have to be a bit more cold and harsh. Like, we haven't won a Munster now since 2018. Like, we were celebrating in 2017, like we'd kind of ended the famine. We won it in 2014. It was only 2 bad years before it, like, that's a long time. Like, and I know Limerick are kind of an all-time team and all that, but sticks in my craw. Like, I've great time for them all, but Limerick are romping to it. And then when they had a dip here, Tipp slipped in and grabbed the All-Ireland. Fair play to him, one last All-Ireland for Shamey and the Mahers and all that. And hats off. That's how you do it, though. When there's blips, you take your chance, and they did, and they won it, and they were absolute worthy champions. And so I've great time for Pat Ryan. I think his setup is very good. He's made a change with the S&C, maybe trying to be more physical again. I do think they've learned a lot. They were pretty consistent. I liked in the league that they kind of won a couple of tight games with a lot of fringe players playing and things like that. There was that bit of bite about them, and I do think the one thing with the 20s you do bring in, whenever a couple of lads, they are used to winning. They do tend to win. There's a bit more back at the kind of, we're a car, like at under 20 for the last 4 or 5 years, even with those 2 All-Irelands they lost. There was kind of a thing of, we're going out in every year. Yeah, we're going for the All-Ireland this under 20, and we've got the best 20 players that are in the country. Now, how that moves into winning an All-Ireland, like, what worried me is just that Hoggy and Harnedy are 2 most consistent forwards. Again, like, they're 33 and 36 next year, like, and that's not that they can't keep playing, and there's no here's your retirement papers just because you've hit a certain age. That type of madness cost us with football 10 years ago when we were sending a load of lads off into retirement there back in 2013, and we paid a price for it, like, because you got rid of too much experience and too much class and all that. But that worried me a teeny bit. You're leaning on guys that are older players, but there was consistency in performance. They were pretty unlucky, and again, the draw as well. Your 2 away games were Limerick and Clare, the 2 hardest games. You'd rather, maybe the way Cork's every second year goes, you rather have, you've your 2 hardest away games. Like, you don't mind going to Thurles. You could, obviously, we have an amazing record up there against Tipp. They've probably beaten us more times than we've beaten them for the last 10 years, but you still wouldn't mind going up there, and they showed in Walsh Park. They went down and won there last time, and it's going to be a new Walsh Park when it's renovated, and, it's Waterford who are the weakest county at the moment, so you'd rather play them away than go up tennis. So I do think that, they were a bit unlucky that way. But at the end of the day, they won 1 game of 4, so I wouldn't be getting too carried away with it. Wait and see. And with the league next year, I'll just put an asterisk next to everything. We just, I'll see what they're like when the ball is thrown in there in April, whenever the first game is, like that. Other than that, because woulda, shoulda, coulda is, like, we should be way beyond that now. Like, there's a very vibrant club scene. We were doing well underage. There's loads of players, more hurlers in Cork than anywhere in the country. So it's not really good enough, But Pat Ryan and them know that. Pat Ryan's a very straight talking guy. He was one of pats in the back for, nearly getting out of Munster and still at the end of the day not coming in the top 3. Like, so, he wouldn't expect anything less. Like, and anyone who gets oversensitive about that sort of stuff when they're involved in management teams, you're not taking a cold hard look in the mirror, it's like when we lost to Galway there, like in the quarterfinal, you couldn't take any crumbs of comfort. Now, yeah, we should have won the game, pucked a load of wides and, left a soft goal and stuff, but, like, just go win the game, and you'll forget about that soft goal. You just find a way to win it, get your scores, batten down the hatches, and we haven't done that in enough games. We haven't won enough games that are tight. When we start winning those tight games, then, we get closer to winning all or nothing of that. What do you act like?
I think there's a bit of Eamon Murphy grit needed in Cork. Telling it as it is.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, in. Really
no bother, lads. Thanks a million.
Really appreciate it.
Great to be on.
Cheers, Eamon. Come on.
He's always great value, Eamon, every time we have him on of the Echo. So go there if you want to see a little bit more of what he has to say from the weekend's action. PWell74, yeah, we're Cork. Come on, lads, move on. You'll need more than that. So that's obviously the Limerick answer to that. Had we finished talking about the Offaly Championship there? What was the semi-final draws tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we didn't talk about Rhinus and Coolderry. That was played on Saturday evening in Tullamore. Rhinus kind of looked home and hosed at half time. I think they were 7 up. Coolderry threw everything at them in the second half. And Rhinus were lucky enough. Aaron Kenny got his second goal in the second half. And they were holding on, to be honest with you. I think it finished 3-13 to 1-16. Rhinus have a few kind of new faces in this year. I'm not totally convinced that they're as strong as they were when they won 3 in a row at the end of 2021. So the semi-final draw is tonight. Kilcormac and Ballymere are the 2 table toppers, so they can't play each other. So it's either Kilcormac versus Rhinus or Kilcormac versus Shinrone, and then vice versa plays the other. So I would say if I was doing kind of power rankings at the minute, I'd probably have Kilcormac 1, Shinrone just about 2, Rhinus 3, and Ballymere 4. Ballymere are the real kind of surprise packets at the minute in the first semi-final in a long, long time. If they avoid each other, I'd say it might be a Kilcormac Shinrone final again. But yeah, I'm sure Rhinus will have plenty to say about that. I think Shano's after freezing on me there.
We actually also want to ask people who are the incoming. Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, we were going to talk about who are the young up-and-coming players that people have seen in their club championships around the country. And I suppose a couple that really stood out to me in recent weeks, both come from Toomevara and Adam Hall, who had 2-3 for Tuam against Clonotty at the weekend, having come on at half time and playing into extra time. And also Darren McCarthy, who's his fellow Toomey Barra man, who's been very good recently, scored, I think, something like 16 or was it 19 points for the under-19s in Tuam there in the last week or so. Then he's not overly young, but Darrell Woods, some of the scoring that he did for Holy Cross over the weekend. So get your comments in. Let us know who you think is a player that's really coming. So the quarterfinals in Tipperary over the weekend, we had two games that they were close to providing shocks. Another game that went to extra time that I've mentioned already, and a very one-sided game. So that was Drum coming up short against Thurles Sarsfields, 24 points to 112. And Drum's goal only came at the end from Tony Cahill. They really were beaten comprehensively in this game. Killadangan, I suppose they've been bookies' favourites to win the county title this year. They really narrowly saw off Holy Cross Ballycahill. That finished 222 to 317. Lockmore just about got across the line against Roscrea. That was 222 to 124. And I think Roscrea will be kicking themselves. That was their first quarter-final since 2005. And they came very close there. And then finally, Toomevara 320, Clonotty Rossmore 124 after extra time. That was a bit of a thriller. Now the pace of the game dropped significantly in extra time, but of course you can't blame club players for that. But I have to say, Thurles, get your comments in about young players, but Thurles Sarsfields, all of a sudden now, this looks like a different team under Paddy Maher this year. They started the group stages, they were very poor against Killadangan that day, and they were beaten comprehensively enough. But since then, they've really taken it on. They beat Clonotty Rossmore, didn't hammer them or anything like that, but they beat them, won it nicely, had previously won the mid, beat Borrisolee all ends up. I watched them down in Borrisolee, fairly well controlled the game against Nina, except for a bit of a run of wides during the second half. They allowed Nina back into it, but they steadied down them when they needed to. But that victory over Drum and Inch yesterday, fair enough, Drum started okay, but just once Thurles took over, it's just this ferocious work rate. I see them winning the county title, and I see them being pretty decent in Munster this year, assuming they get there.
You were calling them cumbersome and slow and big and awkward nearly a couple of weeks ago. Your opinion has obviously changed.
It has changed massively, and I did think that. But some of the bigger players that I thought, wow, he doesn't look to be playing all that well, all of a sudden really are. Billy McCarthy's a huge man, and it's great to see that he's really gotten over his knee issues. Well, I certainly hope he has, and long may that continue, because he had such a rotten time with it. But he scored 1-2 the last day out. He wouldn't have dominated the game against Nina, but he scored 1-2, got a point yesterday, won an awful lot of ball. Dennis Maher's playing full back. We would have more traditionally seen him playing in the forwards, and he's played wing back before, but it's only a couple of years ago that he was called back to the Tipperary panel and thrown in full forward under Colin Bonner. But he's been doing really well at full forward. Rona Maher's dominating from the half back line, and you'd think it's such an easy thing, avoid him as the sweeper. But because of the work rate of the Thurles lads up the field, and this is without Paddy Creedon starting, probably one of the few county players that they have just at the moment that's in there as a forward. He was dropped there for the Nina match because of disciplinary issues. He came on with a couple of minutes to go in this game when the game was dead and buried. And what a strong position that is for Paddy Maher now. He's got a team that is working like dogs on the field. Like Conor Stapleton, he's going to do that. But across the board, everybody's working like dogs, which means that their backs are protected nicely. He's able to leave a county quality forward on the bench. They continue to win. You've got to believe that the mentality and the culture in that dressing room, just at the moment, heading for a semi-final against Lockmore, is exactly where it should be.
Yeah, Paddy would have been involved, obviously, with several squads that won county titles. So probably it was second nature nearly to peak at the right time or whatever, because they always generally peaked and produced their best performances towards the tail end of the year. It was probably a little bit of worry of whether they were going to motor at all, but they've really started motoring now. And they have a lot of tasty players. I'd like to Stephen Cattle midfield, and you obviously have McCormack up front as well. A lot of good players that are very good on the ball. But if you're working like dogs and you're hounding up top, it makes it so much easier for Ronan Matter to pick out lads and give that good quality ball into those kind of nippy kind of forwards as well. And they're humming along pretty nicely now, you'd have to say. They're starting to deliver their best. Been pretty comprehensive the last 2 days. I know Nina had a bit of a fight back the last day, and even the day before that against Clonouty as well. they've gotten better with every game, you'd have to say. And that's exactly what you want going into the last 4 of a championship or going into potentially a county final. You want to be looking like you're improving every day and that you're going to produce their best on the biggest day. And that's what it looks like at the moment from Thurles. But like, I have to say, I hold my hands up here. I didn't expect this. I knew Ross Gray were good from last year. I know Monleen beat them in the Munster intermediate final. I didn't think they'd push probably Lockmore that close. And like, Ross Gray didn't score for a long while in the second half, like a long while. And it took kind of John McGrath to help turn the screw at Lockmore. I probably didn't expect that from Ross Gray. I probably didn't expect from Holy Cross Ballycattle either, to be being honest with you. Just because they were kind of like, they were newbies in the quarter final. They hadn't been in one in a while. And they really threw it down to Killadangan as well. And like those 2 games, it's like Shinrone yesterday, like those 2 teams survived and will be happy to have survived 2 really stern tests. But that kind of said to me that I think Tipperary is going to get even tastier over the next couple of years. You have Toom coming, you have Holy Cross Ballycattle coming, you have Ross Gray coming, Lockmore always going to be there, Thurles always going to be there, Drummer always in around that knockout stages. Borrisoleigh were Munster champions a couple of years ago, Clonouty were county champions in 2018. You know, there's there's a hell of a lot of good teams in there. And it looks like there's going to be a few new faces on the scene over the next couple of years, which is always good to see.
Yeah, Ross Gray were, like, the ball that they were playing to their inside forwards early in the game was really good. Shane Fletcher got a lovely goal. That was only after 4 minutes. And they put themselves in a position of something like 1-3 to a point ahead. But then they gave away a goal, probably softish enough. I think they had it at the other end of the field and they spilled possession, and John McGrath scored pretty soon just after that. Maybe they had a couple of opportunities to clear it. You know, you watch so many games, you're trying to figure out what game was what. But John McGrath scored 1-13, 1-3 of that from play. He's obviously just so good at club level. Noel McGrath had a very quiet game, actually, and he came off injured towards the end, so very interesting to see what the situation is with him. Was he even carrying an injury during the game? But I thought Ed Connolly was really good. He scored 3 points. He's just got that pace and power coming from wing forward. Liam McGrath was playing on the inside line. I think he's such a good outball. Like, he always shows for it, knows where to be. Very, very clever player. On the other side, Evan Fitzpatrick, I think, is a player that's, anytime I watch him play for Ross Gray, he quite impresses me. Alan Tynan actually had to go off. And again, I presume that had to be an injury. You're not going to really take off your county man. Not that he was having a particularly influential game, but I'm not sure, maybe he was carrying an injury as well. But Luke Cashin, he scored 9.7 of those were from frees. Actually, by the way, just to go back to the Thurles game, Aidan McCormick, very silky forward, he actually had 7 wides over the course of the game. And SARS had 11 different scorers. And you mentioned Stephen Cahill there as a midfielder. He actually played in the half-forward line. He seemed to be centre forward for a nice bit of it. And, Podge Campion would like to hold the centre. But, of course, if you do try and hold the centre, a clever player will be able to get away from you and find those pockets to score. I think Stephen Cahill had his 5 points on the board by about 33 or 34 minutes. So he's just one of those lads that, at club level, there's these lads that, and county, obviously, but, like, they get the ball and you're just like, you're nearly chalking down the point even before they wind up to strike it. I think SARS are a serious team. But then Toomey Vara, so they're into the last 4 for the first time in 5 years after beating Clonolty Rossmore. And I think they probably had to beat Clonolty a couple of times to win this game. For a finish, Darren McCarthy, he scored 10 of those are frees. But Adam Hall coming on and scoring 2-3 was huge. And just towards the end of the game, when it looked like Clonolty, who'd had a couple of chances in injury time or late on in extra time to try and get themselves back level again. And I think there was just a point in it after maybe Cahill Burke had put over one of the frees. Again, hard to remember who did what because so much happened. But then there was a puck out for Toomey Vara. Adam Hall, young player, catches the puck out, turns, put it over the bar. And it just relieved all the pressure that had been on Toom and allowed them to get over the line. So, like, for them, that's a huge result. And for Clonolty, very tough, bitter pill to swallow.
Going into relegation now as well. Going into that relegation semi-final now. Is that next week? The 2 weeks, have they? Football next weekend. You'd want it after playing extra time, particularly if you're saying, I only saw bits of it, but if you're saying the energy or the pace of it definitely dropped significantly, they'll need their break and to try and regroup. And yeah, they're going to have to make sure the wheels don't fall off the wagon. We saw with the Glen how easily that can happen. Clonolty haven't particularly impressed this year, but they just need to deliver something to make sure that, I'm sure beating in a quarter final is one thing, but they just want to win that semi-final and get out of Dodge, basically.
Yeah, Killadangan then against Holy Cross. Like, I felt that Killadangan made hard work of this game in a way. Like, they were in a very strong position, and then Holy Cross finished the first half by getting 2 goals. Cathal Barrett, he absolutely nailed the penalty to the top right corner. That was really impressive. Got himself 3 points from play as well. David Fogarty
not
also
given enough credit for his hurling ability, because people focus too much. Like, Cathal Barrett's a lovely hurler. Cathal Barrett is as nice a cornerback on the ball as you will get. Sean Finn and Cathal Barrett, I would say. Sean Finn probably marginally ahead, but like, he's a silky cornerback if there's ever such a thing. Like,
you'd put Finn ahead of him, would you?
I would. Finn's distribution is probably a bit better, yeah. But like, Barrett, because of the dark arts, Barrett probably, that part of his game is probably overlooked in my view. Again, Cathal Barrett is one of these lads that if you're from Tipperary, you love him. If you're from any other county, you probably don't like him. But if he was on your team, you'd take him in a heartbeat. One of those players that when you play against Tipperary, it's the sort of fella you dread, but you'd love to have him.
So then, just in terms of who was good for Killadangan, I thought Billy Seymour was very good. He continues to have really good form. He got 1-5 from play here and 5 frees as well. Brian Malachney scored 1-1. Andy Lucknan, who's forced himself into the team recently, he scored 3. And Sean Hayes scored 3, but as well as that, he won a number of frees, and I thought he was very good. On the other side, like, Dara Woods is a name that definitely would have caught the eye of a lot of people over the weekend because of some of those points he scored, like 5 frees. But some of the points that he scored, like facing away from the goal on the sideline from a fair distance out, like he was popping them over from all angles.
I said it, I kind of tweeted it. I think he's a bit of a Chad Dwyer about him. I'd often look at Laois matches and you see Chad Dwyer winding up from underneath the stand over the shoulder, and you're like, what is this lad at? Number one, he shouldn't be shooting at all. You think there's no chance he should be shooting, so you just think he's going to lay it off there for a second. But Dara Woods, yeah, he reminds me a bit of Chad Dwyer. You kind of don't think he should be shooting from where he's shooting. He still shoots, and invariably they go over the bar as well. He had one of them kind of days the other day. Now, he probably flagged as the game went on, but he definitely, if he wasn't on Liam Cattle's kind of antenna, I'd say he's on it after the weekend. And just for what you were saying when we were kind of just doing a bit of research for the show, Cattle knows him fairly well too, by all accounts. So he'll know his form, he'll know his character, he'll know whether maybe county hurling would suit him. So that's going to be interesting to see whether he's on the Tipp radar for 2024.
Yeah, certainly in terms of stick work, he'd be up there. Gandon Sean Collier says, interesting. Sarahs look far more physical, in my opinion. Allowances are Cork televised club games. They must be made because they're in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, huge pitch, not tight, less physicality. Jay Kwan says, big difference. Finn doesn't get sent off. I don't think Cathal Barrett gets sent off.
No. See, I have to say, like, I'm from Offaly, so it doesn't bother me. But there's Barrett is like, I admire Cathal. I think he's a brilliant player, but he's one of these players like that. Just people get so upset about him. Like, he really
does he get sent off? Like, how many red cards can you think of?
I actually can't think of any off the top of my head. He's obviously involved in that incident with Richie Hogan, or Richie Hogan got sent off, but I can't think of any. But he really rankles people for whatever. It's his combative style, I think, and because he's in your togs, like when he's marking you as well. But he really, really rankles people outside of Tipp now.
Yeah, he definitely does. And wrongly so, as far as I'm concerned. We'll move on to the next county championship for today's show, and that is the Galway Championship. So Turlockmore beat Mike Cullen. That wasn't too much of a shock, 22 points to 14 there. Claren Bridge saw off Ardrahan 220 to 216. Now, Johnny Glen had been appealing, but I think he left it at the Connacht stage, so he wasn't available. And when you look at the bit of damage that he was doing against Sarsfields in terms of the high ball coming in, helping bundle the ball over the line, 4 points there. And I'm not sure Claren Bridge would have had anyone physically to get stuck into him. But anyway, Capitagle.
Did you see the line ball, Shane? Did you see the line ball straight into, I think it was Keen Salmon's path? It was for a Claren Bridge point. It was very like Joe Canning's line ball to Joseph Cooney in that, was it the 2020 Leinster final, I think it
Yeah,
was.
and we
Yeah.
actually did a copycats video, myself and Nisha, on that.
Yeah, he did actually, but it was perfectly into his path. Whoever was picking up salmon hadn't spotted that he even made a run, and it was just beautiful. It was a lovely score. But I kind of zoned out of that game for a bit, and when I came back to it, it was a lot tighter than it had been. So in fairness to Ardrat, and they made a real fight of it, because it kind of looked like Clarenbridge were going to run away at one stage.
And so then Capitagal beat Gort 423 to 218. Finally, Sarsfields then, they beat Clymer Daly. Now, from what I was watching this, it was never massively a contest, and Clymer Daly brought the score back to respectability, all right. But some of the goals, like the flowing move early on, Joseph Cooney was involved, Kevin Cooney finished it off. Another lovely goal by John Cosgrove at some stage. Alex Kinnair was scoring some really nice points from midfield. Kevin Cooney, just some lovely scores outside of that goal as well. On the other side for Clymer Daly, Paul Craven and Brian Kincannon, they got some really nice scores. Senior B relegation final, Athenry did see off Clymer. So that was 228 to 112. A couple of decades after winning the Club All-Ireland, it would have been some disaster to drop down to the third tier.
It would have been. It's funny, someone tweeted me back the thing about when I posted something about Glen, when I reposted one of the OurGame posts. Isn't it mad to think that in the same year and within a couple of, probably about 6 weeks of each other, that Christy Ring's club were relegated for the first time in 97 years, and Nicky Racker's club in Wexford were relegated for the first time in 82 years, Rathnure. And Athenry, I'd say, like, in fairness, they left no doubt about it. That was a really comprehensive result, and it would have been a disaster for them. A couple of times All-Ireland champions if they'd gone back to intermediate. So at least they saved their bacon. I don't know if you have the quarter-final draw handy in Galway, but I know Thomas's are playing Capitagal. They were obviously off at the weekend, so they're going for 6 in a row. The other 3 games, I don't have them off the top of my head, but there's a couple of tasty quarter-finals.
Yeah, give me a moment here. Yeah, Ormore Marie against Sarsfields, Loughrea will meet Clarenbridge, Castlegar against Turlough and St. Thomas's against Cappy. So, actually, I might as well mention...
to call. Like, if you tried to call the top 3 of them, you do well now, because Ormore Marie are flying at the minute. Turlough, you think, are ready to make a breakthrough. Sarsfields are always in around there as well. So, and Loughrea, Clarenbridge is going to be a belter of a game as well. And as one of our viewers said there, you have Niall Moore on the sideline with Clarenbridge, and you have John Conlon on the sideline with Loughrea as well. So that adds a nice little subplot to it too.
How did that end up happening with John Conlon?
Yeah, it's a mad one, because Loughrea had Brendan Bugler a couple of years ago as well. When you're still playing, I'd say, like, I'm sure he's not there every night, because he couldn't be with Clonlara, who are still going. I think they're playing Aero Guinness in a quarter-final probably this weekend. I'd say he's probably there when he can be there. I don't know how that happened. It's a mad one, to be honest with you. Probably because I'd say it's because the Gavin Kiely was involved with Clare a couple of years back as a coach, and maybe there's some sort of connection there, maybe.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a tweet here from Pat Nolan, who, of course, is from your neck of the woods. More reckless scheduling from Offaly GA. Tullamore days after our county finals this Sunday. The other semi-final is weeks away. Yet last March we had bemusement over injuries, and obviously that's a bit of a reference to Ross Ravenhill doing the ankle and other players being injured as well. I'm not sure if you know too much about this. I'm kind of catching you on the hop there.
Can you go again? You just cut out at the start there. You were just saying about more bemusement about fixtures. You cut out then for a small bit.
Yeah, so it's like Tullamore and Dangan are down. Tullamore and Dangan players are down to play an under-20 semi-final 2 days after their county finals this Sunday, and the other semi-final is weeks away.
Yeah, that's strange, to say the least. I have to say, scheduling helped us back in the day. Now, it was 6 days after when Tullamore won the county title in 27, I think, 2007. We played them in an under-21 football semi-final 6 days later, and I'd say a few of them were still worse for wear, and they were raging hot favourites, and we beat them just because we came with a bit of fire. But that's very difficult. I have a big issue in the GA where, like, if you win a county final or you lose a county final, like, realistically, that's the week wrote off. That is it. Like, that's the week wrote off. You're either celebrating for the week and enjoying everyone's company, or you're drowning your sorrows for the week or whatever. And the idea of going playing the game 2 days later and having to temper celebrations in any way, I wouldn't be a fan of that in any way. Like you have to, you're making so many sacrifices. You have to be able to enjoy it, even when you lose. You know yourself. You've lost games, and it's like you finish the year, you spend a bit of time with the boys, and you bond and end up like some of the Burr boys used to do. They do Dublin one day, they do Galway the next night, they do Limerick the night after that. Like it was ridiculous. Like they did basically a tour of the country, and by the end of it, like they wouldn't even be buying new underpants, like to be turning them inside out or something for the next night or something like that. That's the way it was. I won't name any names, but that's the way it was back in the day.
I thought you were such animals down in Bird that you didn't wear underpants. You were still using loincloths.
Simpler times back then, I can tell you. But I do think you should be able to enjoy a county final win, or you should be even able to just switch off for them couple of days. So I wouldn't be a big fan of that.
Sully 180 says, why are under 20 championships even on around the same time as senior? You'd have to ask. So the Antrim quarterfinals were on over the weekend. We actually didn't get around to previewing that last Thursday, but Rossa, they lost by a point to Ballycastle, 116 to 117. Lochgiel fairly dismissed St. John's by 325 to 16, which means the semi-finals coming up down the line, they will be Ballycastle against Cushendall. Dunloy will meet Lochgiel. I think everyone is going to be fancying Cushendall and Dunloy to get through those semi-finals. But look, we'll see. In the
Lochgiel put up a fair score, didn't they? Lochgiel put up a fair score at the weekend now.
Now, as far as I know, St. John's were down a few key players, but the lads who did the scoring for Lochgiel, who seem to have a very good young team, Dan McCluskey, he got a goal in the 3rd minute, and then later on, Shan McGrath and Paul Boyle, who was man of the match, they added in goals as well. Now, the other game seems to have been massive drama. Ballycastle beating Rossa. So Owen McAlonan, he got the winner with the last puck of the game. So just before that, Rossa, they thought they had secured extra time when Stephen Beattie kicked home a ball deep into injury time. Now, Rossa were down to 14 men because Jared Walsh, he'd been lost to a straight red card. Straight away from the puck out, Owen McAlonan, he was found in space and from distance put it over the bar. And it's the first time since 2016 that they've got to a semi-final. And the scenes apparently were unreal. Like there's thousands of people at this game. Like they're absolutely insane for their hurling up there in Antrim. And why wouldn't they be? But they've done it without Neil McCauley, who's been, very good. He's been injured. And Kieran Clark, who people know from the county, potentially, depending on where you played him, you're 11 and you're 14 out. So that's hugely impressive for Ballycastle. And
Owen
look,
McLonan,
nobody's going to back them at all.
every time you said Owen McLonan, I thought you were going to say Owen McLove. Every time you said it.
I know, yeah. When we were doing the research for the show as well, I was looking at it and thinking that. But actually, it's interesting enough that we're still in the thick of the Antrim Championship. Schlockneil, they won their 11th county title in a row in Derry at the weekend, 323 to 1-9. Brendan Rodgers scored a hat-trick. They have 11 weeks off before they play in an Ulster final against whoever comes through between the winners of the Down or Antrim Championship. That's a long... In a way, they're probably happy enough that they can kind of chill in the meantime, put a big focus on trying to reclaim that Derry football title. 1
week off for every county title they've won in the last 11 years. Well earned, in fairness. And here's one for you. Is there a better all-rounder than Brendan Rodgers across both codes? Now, I'm talking about all-rounder. Now, I know you're going to say Con straight away, right? But Con's a full forward in hurling and football. Maybe he could play out wing forward, right? Brendan Rodgers is a full-back in football. He's a midfielder in football. He's a midfielder in hurling. And he's a full forward in hurling. He scored 3 goals. I think he was named at midfield and played full forward yesterday and ended up with a hat-trick. That's fair. That is fair going now. That's fair going. And even like I remember when they played Ballyhale a couple of years, Rodgers was one of their best players in attack as well. ML89 says Dottie Burke easily. Yeah, Dottie's a good one. Still though, he's a back in both codes or maybe a midfielder for the football. Rodgers goes across nearly every line of the pitch across both codes because usually you're kind of usually one or the other, really. You can play one place, but to be able to go from full back in football to full forward in hurling, that takes some doing now.
Okay, so then the Dublin quarterfinals, we know what they're going to be now. Kilmacud are going to face Na Fianna, which is very tasty because that's Ballybode to me because no loss there, I can tell you.
Shano, you might
they're already into the semi-finals as group winners. Relegation.
Shano, you might jump out for 1 second. Your line is cutting there for a second. You might just jump out for 1 second. Yeah. So another busy weekend, as Shane says, in Dublin there. That Nafina Kilmacud quarter-final is going to be very, very tasty. Kilmacud obviously broke their duck a couple of years ago when they made a miraculous comeback to force extra time, and then eventually beat Nafina in extra time after Nafina looked like they were going to take that. But that's two tasty semi-finals. Would anyone have predicted, Shane, that Vincent's would be straight through to a semi-final before the championship started?
Well, when people saw that Pat Gilroy was taking over the job, I'd say they would have thought they're going to get the best team possible out this year. And I don't think Ryan McBride, I know it's spelled Ryan, but I pronounced it Ryan. I don't think people were expecting him to hurl this year. He certainly hadn't been involved for a while. So when he came back and the team was already humming and you had Pat Gilroy at the helm, I'd say people would be thinking, like, with the talent they have, they won't be all that far away. Like, they've been kind of threatening, but more of a semi-final type team in recent years. Like, to be honest, the talent on that team, they won't be that far away.
It's funny when that sort of caliber fella comes in. Like, a lot of lads, like Dermot Connolly's going to find it woeful hard to say no to him. Like, realistically, do you know the draw that he has? Certain lads will just pull lads back in. Definitely looks like Gilroy's pulled him back in. He's getting a bit of form out of him as well. He's often inside with Heatherton, I think. Kilmacud are still favourites. Still strong favourites to win Dublin, though, to be fair now. And I know they have to go the longer passage through, but no, I'd still have them as fairly firm favourites now still, even though they're going to have to win it the hard way.
Yeah, and it's Whitehall Fogs and Plunkett's Bridget's in the relegation playoffs. But like, Coola took a serious battering from Kilmacud at the weekend, 223 to 16 points. Fergal Whiteley got a goal in the opening minute and early in the second half as well. Oisin O'Rourke knocked over 12 points. But like, I'm obviously speaking with the Coola hat on here, but you know, this was comprehensive. And like, even the years where we were winning county titles, when we were playing against them, it wasn't by much. It was a couple of points here and there. If we met them earlier in the year, like, I can't even remember all the fixtures, but like, there was never that much in it. To lose by this margin, especially after the manner of some of the defeats in recent seasons, to me, you know, that can't happen. You can't lose by that much. And I know that there's players missing. Fair enough. You can say Cian O'Callaghan and David Tracy are in Australia. Sean Tracy's not there. Con O'Callaghan hasn't been available yet. But even so, you know, you need to be getting that bit closer. And I know it's easy for me to say it now that I'm not, I'm playing junior these days. So it's not exactly, I don't have my shoulder to the wheel. Obviously, I'm gone past my best at this stage. But it's just not quite good enough. Like, Crokes are coming, right? Sorry,
what was your best?
Crokes are here.
What was your best?
That feels like a very unfair question.
Hey, listen, I'm in bad form this morning. I'm going to take someone down with me.
Yeah. Oh, sure, we lost with the Coola Juniors yesterday, and we have a relegation game coming up in a few weeks. It wasn't a good day at the office.
The pressure is on. The pressure is on. But just on Coola, like, I remember we did a club power rankings. COVID time, or maybe the year after, we had them quite high, and like, realistically at the minute, you're not the colour of being near the top 20 or 25, maybe even at the moment, realistically.
Keep going.
And there looks to be a big gap there between where you were in even 1920 to where you are now. I don't think they're in the mix at the moment. Even if Con does come back and he's flying it, like, they're actually, you could say you were reliant on him before, but he'd have to do unbelievable damage now. Like, every game would have to be the game of games, I think now. Just looks like things have slipped back a lot.
Well, because of some of those players that I've kind of mentioned that aren't there, you know, and even Paul Shute has been, he retired there a couple of years ago. Mark Shute is not playing this year because of an injury there as well. So, like, you're talking about a huge amount of players that have done it at a very high level for a long time, not being involved. So in some ways, you say it's fair enough to the management. You know, if we come up short this year, fair enough. There's an awful lot of players missing, but it's just that manner of a defeat. Just, you know, and I'm sure they'll be as disappointed as anyone and pulling their hair out and wondering why. But yeah, it definitely feels like Coola are a nice bit off at this stage. But it's very interesting that the quarterfinal sees Kilmacud against Na Fianna, because these are two teams that would really fancy themselves to go all the way this year, and one of them is going to be out. So you've got a very good chance of, we'll see how the draw goes, but like Lucan or Vincent's getting into a final this year. Now, who knows? Maybe it'll end up being the likes of Crokes and Bowden in the final. Maybe Kula will get a final as well. Obviously, I'll be hoping that is the case. But that's going to be a tasty one. And like Vincent's beat him well, 326 to 113. John Heatherton scored 14, and three different brothers got on the score sheet in terms of goals for Vincent's: Derek Ryan and Cian McBride. Na Fianna beat Ballyboden 315 to 116, but a red card just before half time was fairly influential. Niall Ryan, he was sent off, but goals from Sean Curry, Kieran Stacey and Sean Baxter allowed Na Fianna to get the victory there. Pierce Christie got the goal for Ballyboden. So yeah, look, that's the state of play in Dublin now at the moment. Unless you want to add something into it.
No, I'm sitting in a car park here in Roscrea, and it's absolutely teeming rain. It's a pathetic fallacy for the end of Roscrea's Tipperary campaign, unfortunately. The weather is resembling the mood in the town.
So in Kerry over the weekend, Nagale beat St. Brendan's Board 3-11 to 5. So Cairns O'Reilly, they beat Shannon Rangers. That was 121 to 116. Tom Hoare gave an exhibition with 1-7 there. Temple No just about beat West Kerry, an 8th point from Killian Spillane. That allowed them to get a 213 to 18 point win there. East Kerry, they played without the Cliffords, 313 to 111 victory over South Kerry.
Hey,
and to be honest,
strength and depth's not bad, is it?
Huh?
Yeah, strength and depth is not bad when you can win without two of the best players in the country. Definitely the right decision as well. Yeah, definitely the right decision. Like Eamon was saying earlier about some of the Cork divisional sides, I think when you're at that stage of the competition, like you're just resting yourself for 1 week, you play a final, you'll be back for the rest of their games thereafter, providing you're fit and good to go,
Yeah, Rathmore, they drew with St. Kieran's. That was 20 points to 214. Dingle, they beat Dr. Crokes. That was 113 to 314. Conor Geaney, very good there. He hit 1-8. 4 of those were from placed balls. Field Rangers, they lost to Kenmare Shamrocks, 9 points to 13. Mid-Kerry, they beat Spa, 311 to 14. In Mayo, then, Ballyhonus lost to Castlebar Mitchells. That was 10 points to 1-9. Knockmore saw off Ahamore, 113 to 8. Balla 212. Ballina Stephenites, 124. Brafey 210. Mayo Gales 9. Ballintubber against Gary Moore seemed like a bit of a grind there. 8 points to 6 for Ballintubber. Balmullet 313. The Nail 7. And Westport 16. Clare Morris 1-5. Ballahadreen 7. Charlestown 9. So actually, I saw a tweet there from, let me just pull up this tweet here, Conor McKenna. Thought this was an interesting one in terms of the Mayo Football Championship over the weekend. I'm sure you probably saw this as well yourself. Carlstown Kinnegad reached their first county final in 25 years after a 5-point win against Colliery, who are managed by Shane K. Kern. Comes just 8 months after their player Colin Murray died in a car crash. Super stuff from Carlstown Kinnegad in extremely sad and difficult circumstances. So, a credit to all the players there. And obviously we, extend our condolences to the families and friends of that young man there as well. They'll meet St. Lomans of Mullingar quite comprehensively, 213 to 5 points there. So I'll let you back in. I've had a fair old rant there.
Yeah, just on Carlstown Kinnegad, they have a fairly stellar management team. Jack Cooney, that used to be over Westmeath, is over them. I think it's jointly managed by Pascal Callaghan as well. As you say, it's their first county final since 1998. I think they won. Did they win in 96 or 97? I think. They were beaten in a couple then as well. But Lomans are heavy favourites going into that. Like, I was expected to be a tight game with Tyrrell's Pass the other day. I was just listening to it a bit of Midlands radio when I was in the car the other day. Lomans started well. I think Shane Dempsey was very good for them. Obviously, John Heslin as well. And like 215 to 6 points is as comprehensive as you're going to get. Like, Tyrrell's Pass were never really in it, even though I think Dennis Glennon had a few moments of brilliance again. It's great to see lads like that are well gone from the inter-county scene, still playing their trade with their club and going hard, but they'll be disappointed with the way things finished up. I think Lomans have the bit between their teeth after been beaten going for the 3 in a row last year, and that kind of signalled the end of Declan Kelly's 3-year spell in charge. And yeah, looks like they're keen to get back on top of the mountain in Westmeath again, and they'll be heavy enough favourites going in. The nature of it, they're going to be strong favourites anyway. The fact that they're going against a team that hasn't been there in 25 years probably makes them an even stronger favourites now. But Carlstown Kinnegad have obviously made little bit of history already, and with the two boys that they have, that sort of calibre of individual on the sideline, they'll fancy their chances, all right.
Yeah, in Clare football then, this was quarterfinals. Cratloe beat Kilmurray Bricken. Éire Óg Ennis, they beat St. Joseph's Doura Bearfield. That was 15 points to 111 after extra time. St. Brecken's, they had a 1-9 to 5-point win over Lissy Casey, and Kildysert were beaten by Milltown 1-8 to 8 points. In Laois then...
Did you see who got the goal for Cratloe, no?
Who was it?
Dermot Ryan.
Was it, yeah?
Yeah. I love to see that, lads, that you maybe wouldn't associate with another code. And obviously Cratloe are gone out with a hurling now, so they're in the senior B, but he can focus attention on the football now as well. But yeah, probably I don't know if he's as good from distance in the football as he is from hurling, but he obviously was fairly decent at the weekend anyway. Gordon Kelly, Shane, I don't know if you see it. It seems like every second week when there's Clare Football Championship on, Gordon Kelly, who retired from Clare a couple of years ago, and David Clifford always says that he's the hardest man that he ever marked. He just seems to be man of the match in nearly every game he plays.
Yeah,
I asked him what the secret was to his longevity before, and he just said the Atlantic Ocean, which he used to get into fairly regular. But he's still flying high at club level in Clare.
Yeah, in Laois then, Port Arlington beat Courtwood 4-16 to 10. O'Dempsey's just pipped by Port Laois 14-13. Killeshan 12 points, Greg Cullen 2-10, and St. Joseph's had a little bit too much for Emo 2-12 to 3-7. Just for anyone who wants to know, the Laois semi-finals now, St. Joseph's are against Port Arlington and Port Laois will be against Greg Cullen. In Longford then, actually, Mullinachta were knocked out. I don't think too many people would have seen Clongish beating them, but it was 112 to 9 points, so it was comprehensive enough. They're probably seen as the common team in Longford. They're going for 3 in a row in terms of Munster titles, 4 in a row under 16s and back-to-back under 21s. Probably a bit too early to win senior this year, but they look like they're going to be serious after that. They have David Barden back out of retirement this year at 41, and he's very good as a full forward. But first half, Mullinachta, they were totally on top, led by 4, but all they managed to score in the second half, I think, was a free, and they were ran off the pitch. The other games then, Killogue, they beat Longford Slashers 118 to 3-9. St. Mary's of Granard had a 1-8 to 114 loss to Columkill, and Dromard, they beat Rathcline 115 to 9 points. And as Jack points out here, Mullinachta beaten in Longford by Clongish. Another message in here from Jared O'Dwyer. Will John Kiely become the new 5-in-a-row Taoiseach, Limna Cabu, revolutionising hurling and now national politics? Is this a dream or what? Yeah, you were looking at some quotes there that he had.
Yeah, you might read them out there, because I just can't. I don't have another device available to me here. But he was quite he was saying about a lot of offers he's had to go into politics and that type of thing, and I just thought it was interesting. It wasn't, I might do it. It was kind of like, I probably will do it if when the time is right, or whatever. When that time is right, whenever the Limerick juggernaut maybe comes to a halt. But definitely looks like he's no longer principal in the Abbey in Tipp Town. I think he's going back to teaching. He's going back into the classroom. But I just thought it was interesting, yeah. And I don't know what persuasion he is as regards parties or anything like that. But it'd be mad to see him in politics in time. If he's as good in politics as he is at management, people around Limerick and South Tipperary and that would be lucky to have him, I'd say.
And if you look at I think it was the Oireachtas there in recent days, or the question that we had of RTE the other day, you had Alan Dillon asking the questions. It's not unusual to have someone from a GA background, Jack Lynch and so on, that end up in politics. And yeah, I suppose he joked, I'm looking at something that you put up on Twitter, he joked that my wife tells me politics is out for me, but time will tell. Some people have asked, but they haven't gotten an answer. Lots have asked him to enter politics. Who knows what's down the road, and hopefully opportunities will come my way down the road. I'll assess them as they come, and hopefully I'll make the right decision for me and for whatever organisation that might be. So not only does it seem like he's not ruling it out, it's almost like he's ruling it in.
Oh, it looks like he's ruling it in, without a doubt. Yeah, someone just said Richard Hogan said he rocked up at the races in Galway after the All-Ireland last year. Yeah, he was there it's only a couple of days after, maybe a week after the All-Ireland. I think he was there with JP. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'm sure he'd be in demand as a manager, let alone with politics. Like, not being smart now, politics, I can't get my head around, like, getting involved in politics. I just think it's probably the most thankless job. I think you're a bit of a bollocks no matter what you do, being honest with you. That's just my own opinion. You just will not please people, even if you're doing your level best. Now, I would definitely question a lot of the politicians in this country at the minute, but that's a separate thing. I just think, for all the money in China, I wouldn't go near politics. All the tea in China, I should say.
So Keith, your comments coming in. Mikey Donlan's grandfather at TD in Galway, wasn't he? Sean Flanagan, Mayo back in the 50s, Jack Lynch, and as Richard Hogan says here, John O'Mahony too. Because a lot of
Peter
these
Fitzpatrick, Peter Fitzpatrick, Tony Dempsey in Wexford. Sure, there's probably a couple more as well, to be honest with you. I was chatting to I can't think of who I was chatting to recently. Alan Mangan, the Buddha, yeah. If you have that profile and you're well known, you see, Brian Wheelan even went for local kind of politics in the Urban District Council around Borough as well. You're a well-known figure, particularly in the GA. Generally, you're revered in an area if you've had, and people associate with you. So you kind of have a leg up before you start. A lot of people get into politics that mightn't have had any interest in politics at all, but their GA careers maybe have. Yeah, it says give them a bit of a leg up and people know them and are tended to vote for them, even if potentially they mightn't have policies or anything that they really believe in. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're coming from the Cork,
sounds like an average politician then.
Graham Geraghty did go for Fine Gael, I think it was. Yeah, there's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of GA players down through the years, definitely.
Yeah, and then you had what's the name? The hooligan, the guy who's in MMA. He went with Sinn Féin, didn't he, at one stage?
Paddy Houlihan, yeah, he did, yeah. Paddy the Houlihan.
Jimmy Deanahan for Fine Gael. Fine Gael love a bit of sports washing, according to ML89. Even boxer Kenneth Egan ran for them at one stage. Okay, I think that's about the height of it, except for one thing, the old goat.
The goat, Geaney Mac. I let you go first, Sheno. Is that okay?
Oh, that's very good of you. Very good of you. Okay, who am I going to go with for goat of the week? I suppose I give it to Dara Woods in defeat this weekend for Holy Cross Ballycahill. He gave some performance. And the football side of things, I give it to Conor Geaney for his heroics with Dingle against who was that against? That was against Dr. Crokes.
It's a bit mad. Like the games I saw at the weekend, one was the Shinrone Burr game, so it's a bit mad maybe me giving it to a Shinrone fella, but there were two. I thought there was two brilliant, outstanding players for them. One was Killian Sampson, and the other was Paul Cleary. I give it to them jointly. I think they hit 9 points from play between the two of them. And yeah, hard argue with Conor Geaney. And fair play to Dingle after winning the club title the week previous to be able to get back on the horse, because no doubt they enjoyed that. And they'll represent Kerry in the Munster Championship now, obviously, as well, if a divisional side wins it. So yeah, Conor Geaney on the football side, well deserved.
Okay, well, I think that's it for the show again this week.
Yeah, there's a lot covered, and a lot more to come over the coming weeks as well.
Okay, we'll see you all, folks. Chat to you soon. If you want to get the audio podcast, it's at patreon.com/OurGame.